Krásný den, my vás vítáme u tohoto velmi vzácného rozhovoru s vědcem, psychiatrem, průkopníkem perinatální a prenatální psychologie, doktorem Tomasem Vernym. Já jsem Rypsizohrabian Mišáková, jsem terapeutka a průvodkyně systemickými konstelacemi.
A já jsem Kristýna Strolená, jsem též terapeutka, dula, laktační poradkyně.
A společně s Kristýnkou jsme vytvořili metodu dosycení, o kterou jste možná slyšeli. Pokud ne, hodně o ní píšeme a mluvíme jinde. A teď vám představíme tedy našeho dnešního odborného světoznámého hosta.
Thomas, again, welcome. We are really glad that you could have this meeting with us. Could you tell something more about you? Would you like to introduce yourself and your what you're doing working on now?
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure and an honor to be with you and all your other viewers and fans. I'm a psychiatrist, and I have done many things in my life. I have written 8 books, mostly on pre and perinatal psychology. But my latest book is a little bit different. It's about cellular memory. It's called The Embodied Mind, and it is available in the Czech language. So what I do is that I write for Psychology Today every couple of weeks about subjects that interest me, such as intuition, for example, or fostering empathy and altruism in children, things of that nature. And I also publish a monthly column in the Globe and Mail, which is it's sort of the largest paper in Canada. It's sort of like the New York Times of Canada. And I lecture and I get interviewed by lovely people like yourself. So those are some of the things that I do.
Perfect. Would you tell us about generational trauma, because you write about it in the book?
Well, yes. Unfortunately, trauma, which essentially the body responds to trauma through a stress reaction, and that depending on the quantity and quality of the trauma, the stress reaction can be very large, and it can continue for a long time. And if it becomes chronic, it's called PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And I was just attending a congress in Denver a couple of weeks ago, where one of the best geneticists in the world was telling us about a research that has shown that actually the stress response or the trauma can be propagated down the line 4 generations, not only parents, grandparents, but great-grandparents, 4 generations. And whatever happens to the great-grandparents is gradually pushed on to the next generation, so that we really have to realize that everything that we do as parents, and eventually grandparents and eventually great-grandparents, will have a long-term effect on the children in that family. So the transgenerational transmission of trauma is a very, very important subject, because there's so much trauma around. I mean, all you have to do is, look eastward, right? You look to Ukraine, look to Russia. I mean, there's huge warfare going on. Not so long ago, of course, there was World War II in Europe. There are small wars, large wars going on everywhere. And then there are personal traumas, which are just as bad in some ways than than war traumas. I mean, if you see your mother or father being run over by a car in front of you, that is going to be very traumatic. So trauma is all around us, and we have to become aware of it. And we also have to be aware of the fact that you know, it's treatable. It's not something that is with you forever, unless, of course, you get treatment. And if you get treatment, it can help.
Mm-hmm. So is it possible to say that trauma impacts whole body, including brain or cellular memory and so on?
Yes, absolutely. Trauma impacts the whole body because your whole body reacts to the trauma. I mean, all you have to do, you know, is think of being scared, for example. You know, the moment you're scared, you kind of pull back, right? Your heart starts pounding, all your muscles are working. And one of the problems, because you're a doula, right? One of the problems with pregnant women when they experience stress or trauma, because trauma is just sort of exponentially more stress, but essentially it's still, the body reacts with adrenaline and noradrenaline to the stress. The problem is that when you are in a stress reaction, what the body does is goes into a fight-flight system, okay? And what that means is that it pulls all the blood into the large muscles of the body, the arms and the legs. And
so
it takes blood.
So we can run or fight, right?
So we can run or fight, exactly. I mean, it's very clever. Who would have thought of that? But, you know, the point is that in order to get all that blood into the arms and the legs, it withdraws blood from the large intestines, from the internal organs, and in a pregnant woman, also from her uterus. And so while the woman is in a fight-flight system, state, the baby that she's carrying is suddenly not getting enough supplies of blood, which means nutrients and oxygen. So this is very unhealthy for the unborn child. Mm. And that's one of the problems with women during pregnancy undergoing stress or trauma, that the child is going to be directly suffering in all kinds of other ways. But the major way is the lack of blood. And so lack of circulation to the uterus, lack of oxygen, lack of nutrients, and then, of course, being totally, you know, transfixed by all the stress hormones, which are also through the placenta, of course, going to the baby. So that also interferes then with the development of the brain. And it also interferes with the development of the immune system. So this is very, very unhealthy.
Yeah. Is it possible to say, for example, what kind of struggle can baby have after birth when his or her mother had experienced these things like chronic stress or fears or something?
Or let's say if the birth takes, I don't know, 2 days or 3 days, and she has a lot of stress in hospital, is it, does it also have an impact on baby?
Everything that happens to you from moment to moment has an impact on you. Good things have a good impact, bad things have a bad impact. So it's all cumulative, additive. And so, you know, when you have been exposed to stress, your whole system becomes less resistant to stress, okay? People used to say that, you know, stress builds character. That's ridiculous. Not true. Not true at all. It actually weakens you, okay? Just like if you would have had a fracture in your arm, the arm might totally heal, but it will never be as strong as it was before. Never. And so to your question, Because it is additive, because everything that happens to us, our bodies, our cells remember, the reaction to any subsequent stress is going to be greater than in a person, for example, who has not experienced that stress before. So again, you know, when, for example, a woman, for example, has 2 children, and the first one was born during a time when she was not stressed, and the pregnancy went well, and the birth went well, and everything went well. And then the second child perhaps is born during a time of warfare or personal trauma in the family. Perhaps she has had a violent husband or something like that can happen. Then, of course, that child is not going, and if she will try to compare the two, she will find that the second one, you know, who was born under stressful conditions, is much more difficult, right? Well, the child is not difficult. The child has been stressed, and so the child is anxious and has probably, you know, trouble sleeping, trouble eating. It is more finicky, and so that will make the mother more anxious because the child doesn't seem to be easy. And the child is going to pick up on the anxiety of the mother. And what we have is kind of a closed circuit where each one of them is adding to the anxiety of the other.
Yeah.
And so this is where you have to come in as a doula or counselor or, you know, someone who knows about these things and interrupt that vicious cycle. Because unless it's interrupted, both of them are going to get more and more anxious, and it's not going to end well.
Yeah. And also, it also affects the birth itself, right?
Yes.
The labors, because if I will be stressed chronically, or with some big trauma in the family, as you mentioned, during pregnancy, it probably affects whole my body and also the body of the baby, right? So
absolutely,
maybe the first thing is labor where it will be these effects, like in reality, like in
well, the labor will last longer, probably the woman will have more trouble, you know, pushing, and she will be more in more pain. She will be less resilient. So, you know, the problems are just going to be magnified all the time. Yeah. So this is where, you know, people who are helpful, who try to be helpful to the birthing mother can make a big difference.
And how is it possible to talk out of trauma, or
no?
You know, people usually think that they would try not to think about it and do 100 other stuff, you know, not to feel the stress or the fear and the pain. Yeah, so usually we hear, oh, don't think about it, just do something else.
You cannot fool your body that way. Okay, your body knows better. Your body knows that you were under stress. Your body knows that things are not well. Not thinking about it is just going to make it worse. I would say the opposite. Think about it and talk about it. Get it out of your system. If you don't think about it and if you don't talk about it, all you're doing is repressing it, pushing it under the skin, so to speak. And it doesn't go away. It just gets worse. It needs to be expressed. So don't think about it. Don't talk about it. Is totally the wrong way. Okay. I mean, this is how a lot of people have thought who don't know any better. But it's not the right way. The right way is to be aware of it and to talk about it. And if there is nobody, let's say, to talk to, which can happen in small places, perhaps close to where you live, let them write about it. Let them write in their diary about what they have experienced. and then perhaps send you the letter or something like that. You know, if a psychotherapist or therapist or counselor is not available, write it down. You know, talk into a machine, Zoom, whatever it is, get it out of your system.
Because what we mentioned now, not talking about it, is what the generations, I don't know, 2 or 3 generations ago, they did it. They
Yes.
tried to forget about it. And somehow, through genes, epigenetics, has come to us.
Yes,
3,
right.
4 generations later, we feel something, and we don't know
Yes.
why and where it comes from and what is it.
Yes, that's right. That's right. That's right. So, you know, the genes have continued to carry this forward into successive generations. And sometimes you don't even, I mean, obviously you don't know what's happening because it's totally unconscious. So, you know, talks like this and your program and your meetings help to make the unconscious conscious. And we all know that from, you know, the last 100 years that is really helpful. And suppressing things is not helpful.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And when the trauma stays in body, in cellular memory, right?
Yes.
So we can talk about it, but what else we should do to work with the body?
Well, there are many things you can do with your body. Obviously, if there is any trauma that involved the body, you know, let's say that someone was beaten up, okay? Well, then probably there are scars, psychological scars, in that person's body. And so that person might need body work, which could be like some kind of massage therapy. You know, there are all kinds of body workers nowadays that do different types of body work. But essentially, it's really getting into the body so that the person who is working with the client or patient actually, you know, tries to find where in the body that particular trauma is located, and then, you know, work on it twice a week or something like that, pushing on it, pressing on it, and releasing it eventually. And people who do body work know how to do that, and that can be very, very helpful. Sometimes, you know, there are a lot of people who are not very verbal, not very articulate. And for people like that, body work works better than talk therapy. So, you know, not every kind of therapy works for everybody. You have to find out who you are dealing with and what is sort of their way of being in the world. Like, you know, obviously the two of you are very, very good sort of in verbal communications, but you might find some other people who are not. So if they are not, we have to find different ways. You can do hypnotherapy. You can do LSD or similar drugs, kind of regressive therapy. You can do group therapy, which it can be also very helpful, not just individual therapy, but working with groups. So any of those things can be very helpful. And, you know, the more tools you have in your toolbox, as they say on this side of the ocean, the more tools you have in your toolbox, the better you can serve your clients.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there are a lot of people who only have one way of approaching any client. And, you know, the saying around here is, if you have a hammer, every problem becomes a nail.
Yeah.
Well, you know, every problem is not a nail. And so you have to have as many ways. And if you yourself don't have, let's say, 10 different ways, then you should know someone who does, so that you can refer that patient to someone who is going to be successful with that particular patient or client.
Yeah, that is something what we mentioned very, very often, that it is the best to combine different
Yes,
approaches,
different approaches.
and different ways how to deal
Yes.
with all this.
Yes.
Also, we use some techniques which combine whole body as an organism, like
Yes.
the somatic and emotional
Yes.
part.
Yes.
And visual,
Yes.
we have our method is called saturation method, and we combine working with body, and you go through the body, how you feel, you visualize, you are trying to see something or feel something, and you go also to the emotions. And this is like a method which helps because women later on, because we work a lot of time with women who experience a traumatic birth, for example, or remember or feel that when they were born it wasn't right, it wasn't great. So women,
what did they say? In what way was it not great?
For example, they feel the difference in their body during the period. Period is not that much painful, or is less intense, or in different ways they feel better, they can walk in a different way,
or they get pregnant when they couldn't for a long time to get pregnant, or they have better relationships with their kids or partners and so on. So we can see that the whole system is connected. It's not just, okay, you were beaten up, so we will work just with the body, but maybe the scar. After birth has its own story to tell. It can tell you the story and the feelings behind it. So it's really interesting and important to.
And one thing I would emphasize that we are trying to get them to the nice feelings of safety and love, and then they feel themselves good somewhere in the body. They feel themselves good, right? So this feeling to move to whole body and to start to be a new way of life, because usually when somebody suffers a trauma, they are not feeling well at all in the whole body, right?
Right. And I liked what you said about connectedness. I very much champion that. Everything is connected. And people don't realize how everything is connected. Everything that happened to my father and to his father and my mother, and what's happening right now, wherever you are living, all of that is connected. And so we have to be really, one of the things that I try to tell would-be parents is, surround yourself by people who like you, who support you. Don't have people around you who are critical or negative, because that's going to impact the child that you will be having. So, I think that it's really, really important. Like, as a psychiatrist, I see people sometimes who spend their whole life trying to persuade their father or mother to love them. And that's a fool's errand, like, don't spend your life trying to get someone to love you when they don't.
And they can't.
They maybe never know what is it, how does it feel, and what to do. But usually, we talk about inner child, our inner child. And we are the ones who can give love and everything we have ever needed ourselves. I'm curious because we kind of feel it here, but maybe you as a scientist can say if it's this way. If I feel more positive feelings, you know, and consciously try to do it every day,
Yes.
feel my change my cellular memory, and does
Yes.
it have an impact on my genes?
Yeah, we have to be careful about that expression. It does not have an impact. Genes are unalterable, okay? What we are dealing with is we are turning genes on or off. That's what we do with our thoughts and our life, okay? So the important thing is to realize that there are switches in our genome. And in fact, most of the genome is made up of switches. We only have about 23,000 genes. And the rest of the genome is made up of methyl and ethyl groups, which are the switches. So what the environment does, what our thoughts do, is to influence those switches. And that will make a difference in terms of which genes are active and which are deactivated. And that's why we differ. That's why you are different from the young lady next to you, because you have the same genes, but some of them are differently turned on than others, and that makes all the difference. Yeah. So, but our thoughts definitely can have an effect on our switches, and then on which genes are active or not active. And how we think about ourselves makes all the difference, you know. I always relate the story of this study in New York that was done on something like 84 women who were working in a hotel, cleaning the rooms, and half of them were told that what their job entailed actually was very good exercise. In fact, it was the equivalent of running something like 5 miles a day or something of that sort. And the other group was not told that at all. After 1 month, they measured the blood pressure, the weight, the circumference, all kinds of other things of the two groups. The group that was not told anything didn't change. The group that believed that their work was exercise did so much better on everything. They lost weight, their blood pressure went down, their heart rate decreased. They were in fantastic shape, although they didn't do anything different. It was only their thoughts that were different. It's an incredible experiment. It's really, really, really good. And there are many other studies like that show the importance of our belief system.
So it's not just about bad experiences which can change our switches. It's also the positive ones.
To realize how good you have it wherever you are, you know, how lovely the breakfast was that you had, like really being aware of positive things, not in a kind of I don't know, sort of fairy tale way, you know, everything is wonderful. No, but just realize the really good things, you know, realistically, how lucky we are, how lucky you and I are just to be able to talk here and bombs are not falling on our heads, right? So, you know, just realizing the good things also that happen, because we are much more sort of aware of the bad things. Also, we remember much better insults than we remember sort of positive things that people have said to you. So we remember insults forever, and the positive things go in one ear and out the other.
Okay, I would just ask about the genes and switching on.
Yes.
Let's say
Yeah.
I'm three generation of my family who had cancer. For me, because usually if they find this gene in myself, right, I should go to the surgery and kind of my
Yes.
breath, or I don't know.
Yeah.
Is it possible just through positive thinking change the activeness of this gene?
we have to be careful about saying yes to that. It's positive thinking will definitely help, okay? But then there are other factors also, you know, the diet, you know, the foods that you eat, the water that you drink, the air that you breathe, the kind of job that you have, like all these other things will also have to be factored in. So yes, positive thinking is going to be very helpful. Negative thinking is going to be destructive, but not alone. You also have to look at the whole picture. So, you know, we mustn't simplify things. I think that in today's world, there's a tendency to sort of try to find one-to-one relationships, causality. I think that, like you said before, you know, everything is connected, and we can't take things out of their environment.
And what
So
if
your relationship with your, you know, your partner, with your parents, with your children, all of those things are going to be contributing factors. But, you know, a positive outlook on life is definitely important.
what if I'm trying to think positively, but there is something inside me from where it comes the fear and anxiety, and, you know, like I'm struggling with myself. I'm trying to be positive, but on the other hand, I don't feel it. You know, I'm just in my head.
And that you're not really feeling it, then of course it would be important to find out why you are not feeling it, you know, like what is going on underneath the surface. And in that case, I think, you know, probably some form of therapy would be helpful to really understand sort of the self-destructive impulse that's there. You know, there's some negativity. I remember seeing a very well-known writer here in Canada, and she said every morning when she gets up at 6 o'clock in order to write for a couple of hours before everything else happens, there is sort of a little voice on her left shoulder, like this little devil sitting on her left shoulder. She says, and the little sort of person says to her, "What are you doing? What are you doing? You know, you don't have a creative thought in your head. You know, you haven't said anything new for a long time. Instead of sitting here, you should be exercising. You're getting fat." All this kind of negativity, right? So, you know, we all have that. We all have that. It's just that some people have it more and some people have it less. And if it really gets in the way, then probably talking to someone about that over a period of time might be helpful, because it usually started with some negative input from some important person in your past. It didn't just appear by itself, okay? Because when we are born, we are sane, and the world makes us insane.
I'm curious about ADHD and ADHD and ASD. Usually, many people.
Attention deficit disorder.
Yeah.
ADHD. Yes.
ADHD and ASD, autism.
Spectrum disorder.
Many people have this diagnosis nowadays, and
Yes, they do.
I'm
Yes.
just thinking, is it possible that this is the result of generational trauma? Because if somebody has a trauma, and there are results that it impacts the brain, and it impacts the brain 2 and 3 generations later on.
Not just brain, right?
Not just the brain, but these disorders are about the different functioning of the brain.
Yes. As far as we know, you know, it may be different in the future, but at the moment, Certainly stress during pregnancy has a lot to do with it. A lot of research to show that a stressful pregnancy creates more ADHD children, no doubt about it. Also, in terms of autism, it seems to have an effect on the cerebellum, which is sort of the little brain in the back of the head. And for a long time, the cerebellum was thought to be an organ just that has to do with balance, like bodily, physical balance. But over the last 20 years or so, it has become apparent that the cerebellum also has to do with emotional balance. So when there is stress, it interferes with the neurons in the cerebellum. Many of them are destroyed. Many of them go to the wrong place in the cerebellum, so that the wiring of the brain becomes dysfunctional. So that child already is born with a miswired brain. So physiologically, right from the beginning, it's like you have a computer and it has been miswired. Well, there's no way it's going to act normally. It can't. It just can't. So it's the same thing with autism. I think that there is a great deal more autism, a great deal more ADHD because of all the stressful pregnancies that we have. It also may have something to do with the increase in diabetes too in women. There's a lot more diabetes. There is a lot more obesity. Men and women are becoming much heavier. All of those things. And then, of course, we have microplastics. We don't even know what they are doing to our bodies, but they are all around. We know that microplastics have already been detected in unborn children, in the placenta. The oceans are full of microplastics. The air is full of toxins that we are breathing in every day, especially if you live in large cities. So all of those things combined, are impacting our brains and our bodies. And unless we do something about that, I think that humanity is just going to get sicker and sicker.
We mentioned already, but I'm just curious because we usually use craniosacral therapy. I don't know if you know.
Oh, yeah.
It.
Yes, sure. Yeah, I know it.
Do you think it's possible, like, to empower the person, the brain, to change during the life, to, I don't know, feel more organized or less
connectivity,
yeah,
to improve connectivity or something?
Connectivity of brains parts.
Yeah. I don't know how it works, but it seems to work. Yeah, I think that, many of the therapies that we perform, it's hard to tell, what part of the therapy really works. First of all, there's the placebo effect, right? Just going to see someone who is going to help me and who perhaps has some degrees behind their name, right? And in a nice office, and you're paying for the service, then you believe that you're going to get something valuable for that. So that in itself already is healing, especially if you then can establish a good relationship with that person. I think that people often mistake sort of the therapeutic approach for the therapist. I think that the personality of the therapist, counselor, whatever, is incredibly important. And what we very often do, those of us who try to help other people, is that in a sense we reparent them. We are the good parent. We are the one who is reliable, who is always there, who is always nice, who is always empathic, right? So
Contain their feelings, right?
yeah. So you develop a bond. So it becomes like a bonding, attachment kind of experience. And that in itself is very healing. And then if you have someone, if you are actually putting your hands on their body and you're not hurting them, but you are bringing relief of pain, well, that will even increase your impact on them. So it's hard to tell, I think. That's just my opinion. But I think it's hard to tell whether it's actually, let's say, your cranial sacral therapy that you are doing that is making the difference, or whether you are making the difference in terms of your interest in the person. They are able to trust you, to develop a relationship. All those things matter. And in the long run, of course, it doesn't really matter how it works, as long as it works, right? So, I mean, there must be 100 different approaches to therapy with all kinds of different names. And with the right therapist and the right patient, the right combination, it works. And the wrong combination, it doesn't work.
Yeah, because sometimes we hear that I've tried almost everything and nobody or nothing helped me.
Right.
This is the other thing.
Yeah. And then they come to you and you're the one who has helped them. And suddenly, you're wearing a crown over your head, right?
No.
Because...
Or not.
Or not. No, I wanted to say that sometimes they lose the belief that they
Yes.
are helpful,
That's right. That's right.
Can help them,
Yeah.
and they usually don't go anywhere and stay at home and on the stress, anxiety, depression.
Yes.
They don't have energy to try something else
and look and search and try with whom the relationship and the therapy will go well and help.
Yeah, you have to be careful with people like that, who come to you and they say, I've seen 5 or 6 therapists that nobody has been able to help me. I think that can be sort of very seductive, because then you can come across as sort of, the redeemer. You are the hero. You are the one who is going to help them. Nobody has helped them, but you will help them. And that puts you into a very difficult position. So you have to be careful about that.
Yeah. I studied as a social worker, and this was the big topic of all studies. Like, what is your motivation to help people? Why you want to help? What's that kind of strength or
Yes.
So what we also say very often is that it's not us who do something.
Yes.
We have these tools which we can introduce to you so you can help yourself. And I think it's kind of
gives you the power, to the client that okay, I am able to do it alone, but not alone, that there's somebody who let's say makes the
it's some kind of prevention for us to feel like the heroes, right? Because it's kind of tricky.
Yes, it's tricky. That's right. It's tricky. And and especially when you're young and haven't had that much experience, it's very seductive, and you feel like you have been able to help where other people have not, and it makes you feel really good, makes everybody feel good, until 6 months later when you hear that the patient is right back where they started and they are no better, and you have been added to the list of people who have not helped her.
Could be.
And also it is very nice in cranial sacral therapy, because it's like I feel it like I'm not who does something. I'm just here for you to connect you maybe with some space or something. But everything is what is going on is just
Yeah.
yours, you know.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I like it so much.
That's why you like it so much. Okay. Okay.
We have another question about breastfeeding, because it's a
About
big
what?
breastfeeding.
Okay.
It's a big topic here because we
Yeah.
have, let's say, 2 or 3 generation of women who don't breastfeed. They somehow it doesn't work. They feel pain. I don't know. They have many reasons why they don't do it. Usually they say, my mom and my grandma, they don't do it. They didn't do it. So I'm not doing, I cannot do it. See?
I think there is some impact of socialism and political situation when mothers had to go to work very
Yes. 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 That's right.
But
Yeah.
in Europe, and especially in Western Europe and US,
Yes.
it's normal,
Yes.
right? They go to work very early after giving
Yes.
birth.
Yes.
How does it affect a baby
Well,
or us when we
oh,
are?
it's very bad. It's very bad for the baby. You know, breast milk contains lactobacilli, which are very, very important for digesting milk for the baby. Also, you pick up a lot of immune substance, like from the mother. You pick up bacteria from the breast, which are good for you because they can help you digest things. And the important thing is that the children should breastfeed for at least 1.5 years. And it also, research has shown that mothers who breastfeed benefit from it in terms of lower rates of cancer and many other diseases. I'm not up to date on that right now, but I do remember that there are many benefits to the woman who is breastfeeding, to do the breastfeeding. She will benefit from it. But the baby benefits tremendously from it. And it is so much healthier for the baby to breastfeed than to be bottle fed, so much healthier. And if the woman has problems, then, you know, there are breastfeeding specialists now in most hospitals who can help her overcome any problems in terms of soreness of the nipples or anything like that. But I think what is more, in a sense, more important than complications around the nipple sort of physiological stuff is what you said about the culture and society and the fact that, you know, grandmother and mother did not breastfeed you, so why should I? It's not in their system. It's not part of their thinking anymore, you know. And I think that's very cultural. And also there is also the problem of feminism, where women were sort of encouraged to go back to work as soon as possible because you are just as good as your husband and he's back at work, and therefore you should be working and you can have somebody else take care of your kid. In a sense, children, particularly with the early feminists, were sort of given like a second-rate position in society. The important thing was for the woman to develop fully her potential. And the other thing also that is very modern, and I think it's very North American, but I think it has probably reached you also, is multitasking. You know, you are a superwoman if you can talk on the telephone, cook, and at the same time breastfeed your baby. You know, if you can do 2 or 3 things at the same time, you are superwoman. That is very bad for the baby, very, very bad. The baby really needs to be focused on while the woman is breastfeeding. And that is when the best kind of bonding and attachment can occur, when the woman looks at the baby and the baby looks up at her, and the two of them are bonding. And that is so important for the development of future relationships and the future ego strengths of that baby. And women miss out on that. And the child, of course, misses out on that if there is insufficient breastfeeding. Breastfeeding is really the best way to establish a strong relationship with the baby.
And do you think it has an impact on epigenetics?
Probably. Everything that we do has an impact on epigenetics. And like I said before, this would have a negative impact on epigenetics because the child is not getting what it needs. And the child knows that on some level, you know? So I think that what you should try to tell women, tell them about the importance of the bonding and attachment experience. Bonding is when the woman sort of falls in love with the baby. Attachment is when the baby falls in love with the mother. So this kind of a mutual gazing and holding, and the whole body, of course, is involved. The woman's body is involved. The baby's body is involved. So it becomes a whole body-mind experience. And that is so healthy and so beneficial. And if the baby doesn't have that, it will miss that for the rest of its life. Just like being born, normally vaginally is terribly important as opposed to cesarean section. So that will also make a big difference in terms of the future trajectory of life for that baby.
I would like to encourage the women and men that if they didn't experience these things like this continual connectivity with their mothers or fathers, they can heal their inner child. Maybe that's the hurt inner child who is screaming like, no, don't deal with it, just use some other things how to feed your baby. Yes. Or
right,
just avoid it. Well, yes. Sometimes it's just your baby who is your inner baby or inner child who is hurt.
Yes.
So let's deal with this. Let's heal your trauma.
Yes.
Maybe it will make better your relationship with your baby or with your kids.
And with yourself and with your wife or with your husband, whatever. Right. Yeah. Yeah. It will trickle all around, you know. If you can establish a good relationship with your baby, then your relationships with other people will also improve. So, you know, it's very, very important. The two of you don't have notes. You're just doing this out of your head?
Yes.
well, maybe it's hard on our English. We have small kids, so our English is not as it used to be.
We don't practice it that much.
You're doing very well. You're doing very well. Yes.
You mentioned the cesarean section.
Yes.
Is it possible that we forget to give birth vaginally or in a normal way, I would say?
I don't think so. Not for the next 5,000 years, whatever. No, I don't think that our bodies are going to change that much. No, but I think that, you know, again, a lot of women, especially if they can afford it, you know, I have lectured a lot in South America. I continue to lecture in Chile and places like that. And there, if you are middle class, if you are well off, if you can afford it, you go and you have your birth in a hospital and you have a cesarean because the doctor will tell you that we will put you to sleep. You won't even know that you have had a birth. This is so good. This is so great. You won't feel any pain. And when you wake up, there will be the baby. Is that wonderful? Well, it isn't. It is not. It is not wonderful. It is not good. There are all kinds of repercussions, both for the woman and the baby. For example, you don't really know whether this is your baby, for example, right? You have not seen the baby actually being born. So sometimes, perhaps later in life, perhaps at the age of 5, when the baby is misbehaving, the mother might think, is this really my child? And the same with the baby, you know, when I was born, the baby will think or remember, my mother was asleep.
Maybe
Like,
it was dead, right?
yeah,
She wasn't there. She abandoned
Yeah.
me. I don't know. You have
that's right.
many
That's
emotional
right.
responses to that.
Yeah.
And it's also the really important initiative thing for a woman to give birth, right?
Yes.
Of baby, but women too.
And
Yes. Yes.
usually, I don't know how it's in Canada, but here many women and children are, after the giving birth, separated, and for many hours or days, you know, it's
For
That
observation.
should, yeah, that should definitely not happen. You should always room in with your baby, if at all possible. And you should be awake when the baby is born, and you should be able to put your arms around the baby and let the baby crawl by itself up to your breast and start breastfeeding right then and there, right after the birth. Babies will do that naturally. You know, let me just tell you one tiny little story. I was being interviewed by a journalist, and she told me that when she was pregnant with her first child, the husband was studying medicine, and he was never born. He was never at home. When she was pregnant with her second child, the husband, I guess, must have graduated, because every night he would talk to the baby. And I would say, well, what did he say? And she said that he would talk about the weather and what they had for dinner, and that he looks forward to seeing this child when he is born, because they knew that it was a boy. And then he would say, "Good night, Junior." And so when the baby was born, the husband walked into the delivery room, and when he was close enough to the mother who had the baby on her chest, he said, "Hi, Junior." And the baby just looked at him and gave him this beautiful smile of recognition. There was no doubt that this baby recognized the father's voice. And the important thing is this: she says now, 4 years later, the relationship between the second-born child and my husband is so much better than the relationship between the firstborn and my husband. And she thinks, she's absolutely sure, it's because of prenatal bonding. So, you know, developing a relationship with the father of the child is also important. Not just the mother, because we have been talking a lot about the women. And I think we need to also put the father into the equation.
Thank you for
Good.
Yeah, and maybe a last question, if it's
Okay, sure.
the thing is that we have lots of generation who suffered from war. The men weren't here, then they had to work, and they are and still are, and they weren't at home. They don't know how to be a father usually.
Right.
How does this experiences of war and missing other affect our feeling, our epigenetics, and our life?
Yeah, they have to learn. They have to relearn. Now, that would not be your father. It would be more like your grandfather, I would imagine.
Yeah.
So I mean, very you know, not all men have been negatively affected by this. You know, some of us, men or women, are more resilient than others. So hopefully there are some men around who are normal, whatever that means. And so, you know, having, for example, groups for men is a good idea, so that they can really get together amongst themselves and talk about their difficulties of communicating, you know. Men's brains, by the way, are different from women's brains. And men are naturally, just biologically speaking, not as verbal as women are, and they're not as sociable as women are. And we have to understand that, and there is a difference. And men have to try harder to relate than women. To women, it comes naturally because biologically they are ready for it, and men are not. Men are more analytical and more action-oriented, and women are more social and relationship-oriented, more feeling-oriented. You know, you ask a man how he's feeling, and he looks at you. What do you mean? So it's a problem. It's in a way it's a biological problem and a cultural problem. And so having groups like, if you are interested, you know, in prenatal education, it would be important to perhaps have some groups for men only, just like you could have groups for women only, and then sometimes together, because they might be able, perhaps with the right leadership, perhaps having a group leader there, someone who is more sensitive, more feeling, lead the discussions, and, you know, have once a week for 6 weeks a male-only group and a female-only group, and then perhaps have them together, then perhaps have some couples therapy. Very often, the ideas that a woman has for the child and a man has for the child are very different. And so when the child is born, suddenly there's conflict. The man would like his son to become a soccer player, and the woman would like the boy to become a chef. And suddenly we have a problem. And I need to go.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you very
It
much.
was really
Thank you. Thank you. It was a pleasure, and hope we can meet again.
Me too.